Studies show that women tend to be better at managing their money, including startup microcredit. But I would say I have a whole page of statistics that show female founders, it pays to invest in them because the returns are quite high and we have data points to support it. So why is it more difficult for women to access capital?
So, I mean, the data is in, right? It's not suggestive, it's proven.
It's proven.
But I think that, so on my team we kind of call it a classic female founder quandaries that we run into on occasion, which is that you'll take a male-founded company, female-founded company. Let's say they're both in, IoT, something to do with retail, just randomly choosing something. Oh, sorry, Internet of Things, IoT, sorry, acronyms. I'm trying to stay away. Try to stay away from this. Oh, sorry. Usually I speak too loudly, so all right. But I think for what we often see is that maybe the company has 2 pilots with 2 major retailers across Europe, but maybe they're pilots, which doesn't necessarily mean a commercial deal. But in the Q&A, the female founder will be very kind of upfront, and we're still kind of in pilot phase. It's kind of we're seeing how it goes. Whereas the male founder will make it sound like it's signed, sealed, delivered. So I think that sometimes you do see that happen, and I think it's just a question of increasingly we're seeing more female founders kind of break that mold. But I do think that that's something that does need to happen. The other thing I would say, just in terms of so yeah, I mean obviously women on the other side of the table certainly helps, but yeah, that's.
I would also add to that network, right? Like one of the biggest things out there is that the vast majority of people who we see come through our doors have come from somebody within our network when we're looking at startups. And so, the first step is always just increasing the amount of people in your network who are within like those capital circles, right? And so there's some really easy ways to do that. There's things like going to an accelerator, right? Looking for a grant. Coming to an event like this, where you're surrounded by a bunch of like-minded people. But anything that you can do in order to build your network is going to increase your access to capital, in my opinion.
Anything else to add?
I would probably just add one more thing, which is that by the time we get the women-founded companies I've worked with, because they've had to do more with less, they tend to have kind of metrics and have really actually accomplished quite a bit by the time they get to that stage. And I think it's a question of also promoting those success stories and really talking about them, because that kind of breeds the next generation.
Mm-hmm. So a question, I'm going to kind of rephrase it. When do you consider a business is ready for sale? I think when is a business either ready to be sold, or what is the exit strategy? Or how does a startup decide? Are they going to seek being acquired? Are they going to go public? I mean, going public in Europe is very different than going public here. For example, that exit strategy, and I know some companies don't want an exit strategy as well, which is a strategy, really doing nothing. If anyone wants to address exit strategies, selling or being acquired in your experience, yeah?
So there's lots of talk right now about IPOs.
Yeah.
But quite frankly, 96% of all the companies that make money for a venture capital firm or a private equity firm are sold to a strategic investor. And the preponderance of those companies are sold at around $50 million. So just to get our minds right, most people aren't doing multi-billion-dollar IPOs. That's not where this happens. In my experience, if companies generally get sold to a competitor, a vendor, a customer, or a reseller. So all of those business relationships, you find out as things are going well that perhaps there's synergies there that might suggest that you want to talk to somebody about selling your company to them. In my opinion, when somebody just throws up their hat and says, I want to sell my company, if it's going to have to go to a financial buyer who can roll it up and take cost out. And those, in my experience, have not been the most lucrative exits. The most lucrative exits have been the exits to a strategic, where the combination of the two ventures, 1 + 1 = 2.5 or 3. So,
yeah. I would also add to that anybody who comes walking through our door and says that their end goal of building this business is to sell it is somebody that we're not interested in investing in. because we look for all founders that have passion for what they're building. You need to have connection and reason why you're going to dedicate your life to cultivating this baby and growing it, right? And so sale is definitely not one of the main things that you want somebody to come in and say to you off the bat, but that you should always have in the back of your mind what could be some of those tactics if you reach the end of your life cycle. Is okay, so worst case scenario, who could we sell to? Best case scenario, who could we sell to? And best yet scenario, how could we build this thing into a revenue profit generating long-term Fortune 500 company that is going to take the world by storm?
I think it's really important to think about what face you're putting on externally that represents your company, right? There are things you're definitely not going to say to a prospective investor, but you need to be thinking strategically about it internally, right? And it's that type of thinking and coherence that you have in your messaging that's as important for a startup company as it is for an SME, as it is for a venture fund that's trying to raise money as well. So it's really important, yeah, because it's blood, sweat, and tears when you're raising. It's a slog. It's hard work. I mean, if they think you're like gonna exit the next day, why would they want to invest in you, right? Which brings me to kind of a question here, but one in my mind is, what do you see that differentiates a venture fund? Maybe Abby or any number of you could answer this. Maybe we'll start with Abby. Differentiates a fund when a startup company when they come in and they pitch to you.
Oh, I think that's a good question. So
it could be a long answer.
It's a long answer, and I think it depends on who you're talking to, right? Because Joanne's got different things that she looks for than Angenette has. But one of the big things that we look for is we invest in deep technical people, right? We're looking for deep technical teams who have prowess in computer vision and machine learning and AI and are looking to disrupt an industry. There's a lot of talk about this, and I usually don't use that term, but disrupt an industry or revolutionize the way that the world works and make it a better place. And so that's the number one thing that we look for when somebody's coming through our door. And I think it's actually very interesting. We invest a lot in companies coming out of Europe because there are some phenomenal technical teams and technical universities, whether that's Prague, where I was just 2 weeks ago looking at a team, through to Munich, coming from the Technical University in Munich. And so definitely having a differentiator in your skill set, especially on the founding team, is going to be something that sets you apart from everyone else who's coming through the door.
I always, so we have them come in and pitch. It's kind of a bit like Shark Tank, with a kind of a long table of scary-looking people as the
And you're doing
pitching.
a bit later stage
yes.
as well.
Yeah, so they've pitched a fair amount at this point, but part of what we do, because we bring these companies into a 6-month-long program, that kind of works like an accelerator, but most importantly, what I'm getting at is we have about 5-10 minutes from them to pitch their business, and then it's about 45 minutes of Q&A, and it is kind of rapid fire, right? And I think that specifically I'm thinking of a couple of companies that I'm currently working with, female-founded, that have just nailed the Q&A. Because I think that sometimes it can be a bit, people can disagree with you or question some of your statistics, and you have to really stand firm, and sometimes, the waffling doesn't, you gotta just really believe in yourself. I mean, confidence is the key. So.
I think there's something to be said beyond just the money. It's the culture of the organization that you're raising the capital from. Not all PE firms are the same. Some PE firms are excellent in dealing with union issues. Some PE firms are really there for a loan-to-own strategy. You're desperate for money, they're going to give it to you on really tough terms, and they're making it really tight so you trip some covenant, and pretty soon they own the shop and you're out the door. Others have a more collaborative style. Maybe they're looking at your company because you're in an industry that's very complementary to other portfolio companies in their portfolio. So you can either be a supplier, or you can be a buyer, or somewhere in the vertical structure of the other companies in their portfolio. So there's a natural cohesiveness within the portfolio. So I think it's really important to understand who you're dealing with. Are they investing in your company because they like the industry, they believe in the management team, or do they see a weakness in your management structure that they really plan to? What are the statistics? Something between 67 and 72% of Series B thereafter capital, 1 or 2 of the C-suites are replaced by the PE firm, right?
They've got in their mind what is driving this company, like you mentioned, and what will make it succeed. And they're also looking for what are you really good at and where are the gaps that we can support you? And is that in a collaborative fashion or is it a more aggressive fashion?
We are, I believe, over our time, so I'm just going to wrap it up by just saying, you know, clearly there's a lot of options out there in terms of, you know, if you choose to raise capital, how you go about it. But I would just say something encouraging, which is don't give up if you believe in your passion at this company. It's not easy for anyone. I mean, it may take 40, at least 40, to get one meeting. 40, you know, emails and or phone calls to get one meeting. You get the meeting, that says something. And just keep going at it. And you know, I think that if you keep going at it and you believe in it and you really take in the feedback that you're getting and you apply it to what you're doing, you can go much further. And best of luck to you if you are raising capital. And thank you so much to our panel for joining us today. Really